And the first 2 years focus on the basic sciences. Year 3 is clinical sciences, where you learn about diagnosis and treatment of disease. But then in your third year, in the fall of your third year, you pick a clinical track. And you can go to the next slide. There's 7 tracks that we have, and these are the most focused are small animal. They're only in the small animal hospital in their 4th year. Now, in the preclinical curriculum, everybody gets trained in techniques and skills and medicine and surgery of all major domestic animal species. But then in semester 5, you pick your track. You pick several electives in semester 6, and your electives in semester 6 are usually you guide your decisions based on what your track is going to be. And then in your 4th year, it's 12 months of clinical rotations, and your 4th year track determines what your plan of study is. So the most focused are small animal, equine, and food animal. So equine, food animal, and large animal, which is a combination of those two, are only in the large animal hospital in their 4th year. And then mixed animal and companion animal are in both hospitals, large and small animal. Companion animal is a combination of equine and small animal. And then non-practice is for people that are going to do maybe go into research or do a Master of Public Health concurrently with their DVM program, or maybe a PhD or master's program, and want more time for research in their 4th year. And so they're in both hospitals as well, but they do fewer required clinical rotations. Next slide. So if you don't want to focus on one area of species, that's perfectly fine, and you can do the mixed animal track. And historically, about 40% of our class picks the mixed animal track. So that's like traditional programs that many schools have where they don't have tracking. But if you want to focus, if you know what you want to do, then picking a more limited track where you just do small animals or just do large animals could be just what you want to be able to get more in depth into the species you're more interested in. But regardless of what track you pick, all the tracks have some common requirements. So as I said, it's 17 3-week blocks in the 4th year. And one of those 3-week blocks is a vacation block. And so everybody gets the option of a vacation block. And we highly encourage you that you keep a vacation block, because having a break in the 3rd year and having time to look for jobs is a really good idea. And then the other rotations that everybody takes medicine in either small animal, large animal, or both, depending on their track. The same with surgery. Primary care, that's means like that what the everyday veterinarian does. So small animal community practice, equine community practice, a bovine rotation that does everyday primary care type things. You have to take at least one block in the primary care. And then anesthesia, everybody takes a block in that. Ancillary is a combination of 3 different areas. So clinical pathology, where you're learning more about interpreting laboratory data, and then microbiology, which is about cultures and PCR and things like diagnosing COVID, those types of things. And then necropsy is doing autopsies or necropsies on animals. And so those 3 are taken all at the same time in a 3-week block, and different parts of the day are dedicated to different areas. And now a new rotation that we're starting with the next 4th year is this after hours emergency ICU rotation. And this is an improvement in our 4th year schedule to try to improve the learning experience for students. So instead of having to be up all night sometimes with emergencies as well as during the day, you'll be on a 3-week block where you do after hours emergency or ICU duty in the small animal hospital. And then you get off during the day in that rotation. So we've rearranged some of the requirements to accommodate either a large animal after hours or small animal after hours rotation. And then there are elective rotations as well. And so the electives are variable depending on the track that you're in. Diagnostic imaging is another 3-week rotation, and all the tracks except for food animal and non-practice have to take diagnostic imaging. Next slide. And so these, we can come back to these later. I think I'll stop there with telling you about, sorry, Percy is putting his tail in my face, about telling you about the 4th year, and let the students tell you more about their experiences and what they think, since they're living it right now.
All right, so we do have 3 of our 4th year students here tonight. We have Jeff Helfrich, Sarah, is it Stram or Strom? I don't want to say it wrong, but I just Stram. Mm-hmm. And then Tatiana, and let's just face it, I'm probably not going to do it.
Sophie Chuk, you're totally fine.
So let's just start with Sarah. And she's going to just introduce herself and tell you why she chose Purdue. How's it going so far throughout her 4 years and all that.
Yeah, hi. Hi everyone. I am Sarah Schramm, fourth year veterinary student, originally from the suburbs of Chicago, here at Purdue now. I am tracking small animal, so I'm spending all of my time in the small animal hospital. But fourth year's been great. Do you want me to go ahead and start off why I came to Purdue? Okay, so yeah, I came to Purdue, because one of the reasons it was a lot closer to home, but the other thing that I kind of really liked was the fact that when I came for my interview day, there was a big like family feel to the place. And I'm sorry you guys can't experience it. It's a little different virtually, but I came here and I just felt very comfortable. You know, people would say hi to me in the hallway, even as, you know, some stranger interviewee that might not even be here one day. But I felt very comfortable. It just felt right when I was here. I love the small class size. I love how close we are able to be with our professors and our other teachers that are part of our classes, especially the veterinary nurses. They're amazing here. But yeah, fourth year has been really fun. It's been a great time being able to put everything that I have learned in the past 3 years into practice and be able to see myself, you know, really grow as a doctor and be able to problem solve and create a problem list and come up with differentials and treatment plans. So fourth year is definitely a fun time. The first 3 years are kind of I wouldn't call it a struggle, but they definitely make you enjoy fourth year a little bit more. Does that cover everything for you, Laura, you think?
Yeah, you'll get questions too. So
Okay,
what did you tell me? Did you say what track you were on?
Small animal. Yep.
I'm sorry.
No, that's totally fine.
I have my dog in here for the first time and she hasn't seen me all day, and so she's a little needy.
Yes. Cool.
Oops. All right. Jeff, why don't you go?
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Jeff Helfrich. Obviously, I'm a fourth year student. That's why I'm here. I'm tracking mixed animals. So if anyone has questions on that, throw them in the chat or we can talk about it a little bit later. But the reason I came to Purdue for vet school is a few reasons actually. Number one, I'm from Evansville, Indiana, which is down south. If you guys know Indiana, it's all the way at the southern tip. So it's just a quick drive up north for me. I also did my undergrad here as well. And so by the end of vet school, I'll be here at Purdue for a total of 8 years total. So it may seem like a long time, but it seems longer to me, that's for sure. It's definitely a home away from home. I also came to the Boiler Vet Camp when I was in high school. And so I got to experience a little bit of the vet school and things like that. So it was really great for me just to come back to an area I've already been and just undertake this journey that we've all been working so hard for. So.
All right, thank you. And Tatiana, you're next.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Tatiana Sofichuk. I am originally from Ukraine. That's the long name. That's hard to spell and pronounce. But I've moved to the United States like 12-ish years ago. So I've been through high school and undergrad, and now I'm a fourth year here at Purdue. I didn't know I wanted to be a vet for a very long time. So I chose I was pre-med track at an undergrad, and then at the end of my sophomore year, I was like, you know what? I really want to be pre-vet. So Purdue was actually the very first vet school I've ever visited, and they have open houses, or pre-COVID era, they used to have open houses in the spring. So my sophomore year in undergrad, I came to the open house, and gosh, I loved it. I fell in love with it then. So when I was applying to schools, I knew I wanted to apply to Purdue, and I was in undergrad in Illinois, so that was considered my state of residency. So I also applied to U of I, and that year the incoming class to U of I was 160, I believe, and our class was 90, so almost half the size. And I just remember, gosh, I cannot imagine being in such a big class and just knowing that I would have a lot more hands-on experiences here at Purdue just because the class size is smaller, your ratio from student to professor ratio is smaller, and so on. And then it just seems like you're a closer family. And when I interviewed at Purdue, as Sarah mentioned, we had that big banquet that I'm sorry you're not able to experience, but that was also great because you got to connect with students and faculty. You have this huge meal after a long, stressful day of interviews. So it just kind of seemed like the best fit for me. Um, and then I was always worried about finances too. I wanted to go somewhere where like you're essentially getting the same degree no matter where you go. So I didn't want to spend too much money going to an outstate school, but then Purdue's outstate with the scholarships they offer and grants they offer was cheaper for me than going to U of I in-state with all their fees, and they didn't offer as many scholarships since Illinois is a little more broke, so to speak. Um, so that was my reasoning behind going to Purdue. And I am a small animal track, so I also spend all my time in the small animal hospital, except when you're on anesthesia, you're highly encouraged to try other species. So I had a equine patient in CT, which was fun, but definitely stressful because I was like, what, we're gonna do what to the horse now? And so that was fun. So you get to experience a little bit of large animal depending on the electives you choose. So I was on neurology, and our neurology team sometimes does consultations in the large animal hospital. So if you're a student on rotations like cardiology, oncology, they will sometimes go out to the large animal hospital and do consultation. So I done a little bit of large animal work, but not too much. And then fourth year overall is the best year, and we live fourth year through COVID era. So even in these circumstances, it's still the best year just because you finally get to kind of put all your learning and all the skills you've acquired over the last 3 years to use, and you really learn the material now. Like in lecture, it's one thing, you're like, oh yeah, this is the case, this was the animal, this is what the treatment for it is, but it won't stick until it's actually your patient and you're talking to the people and you're connecting with clinicians and you have to actually use your brain to figure things out. So this is definitely my favorite year, although it's tough because we're not allowed to really spend a lot of time together in the same room with our classmates. Like we're encouraged to socially distance as much as possible. Everybody has to wear masks and face shields, and I took shelter medicine rotation and we had to wear face shields while doing surgery. So that was tough because things were fogging up, or sometimes you're like the glare from the light on the surgical table is just, I cannot see anything. So it's definitely not how we all imagine it would be, but I would say it's still absolutely my favorite year. I don't remember what other things we were supposed to discuss.
It's okay. They're going to ask you questions. So.
Okay, good.
Make a comment about the tuition since Tatiana talked about the cost. We had, some of you have been on the calls earlier, but Purdue has had a tuition freeze now for several years, and next fall we'll be going into our 10th year of a tuition freeze, and that includes the DVM tuition. So it's really helped our DVM students to keep their debt down.
Definitely. So you guys know the drill. If you want questions, you can either just pop on your mic and ask them, or put them in the chat and I'll read through them. We're happy to answer any kind of questions that you have, and these guys are just awesome. So I know that they'll share anything that they need to with you. Don't be shy, guys. Do most students receive scholarships, and how does this application process work, and how much money is normally available?
So there's not an application process for it as long as you filled out a FAFSA. There are university scholarships and grants that happen centrally, and you have to do your FAFSA. And then that happens once we extend offers of admission, then the Division of Financial Aid will reach out to all the individuals who got offers and send them a link to see what their financial aid packet would be. And that would include central scholarships as well as the limited scholarships that we control at the vet school. But pretty much almost everybody, if you've got financial need, and most professional students have financial need, almost everybody gets some degree of scholarship. It might be a couple $1,000s or it could be more than that, but almost all professional students get some.
I know there are also some scholarship you can apply for, like through AVMA, IVMA, so
Yeah.
Indiana Veterinary Medical Association. And then I've applied for a bunch of AVMF ones, and those were like not that hard to
Yeah.
get to.
So
And
yeah, and there's several companies that have application processes for scholarships. So you can get, $1,000 here and $1,000 there, it'll add up.
yeah, so even if you don't receive it one year, I've received one like the following. I just kept applying, and at some point you receive something. So, and they are great at, like, student services is great about emailing you like, oh, Zoetis company has this scholarship, or there are like random scholarships that alumni have created, and sometimes they are available as well. So
Awesome. Thanks, guys. So our next question on the chat is, how hard is it to get externships for the mixed animal track out of the vet school? Like as if you are interested in non-domestic species.
Yeah. So, non-domestic species. So are you talking about like working at a zoo or in things like that?
So yeah, like exotic or wildlife animals.
Yeah, very cool. Well, I know we've got a couple of classes in our curriculum that are based on exotic works. So I know many of my classmates took a small animal exotics course specifically designed to talk about those subspecies that we routinely consider at just your typical run-of-the-mill small animal practice. But personally, I did an externship at Mesker Park Zoo. It's down in Evansville. And Dr. Salisbury hinted at this during the curriculum slide. You get 6 weeks of time where you get to choose kind of whatever you'd like to do in this profession. And it's just up to you to kind of talk to different people. A lot of websites you can look up these days will list the primary veterinarian's email, or you'll meet a lot of people through clubs and things like that while you're here. And that helps you kind of formulate what you're going to do during 4th year. And so it was a really amazing experience. I learned a ton about large and small animal exotic work, and that was a really great thing to learn personally.
And we also have an off-campus block program that particularly students with a career interest, because we don't have any zoo specialists at Purdue. We do have a collaborative program with the Indianapolis Zoo. And so students can do rotations 4 to 6 weeks at the Indianapolis Zoo. And then we provide some veterinary care for their animals. And then we also have what's called the off-campus block program. And that's where you want to do something that we don't offer, which zoo and wildlife are really common ones. And you apply for a 3-week rotation that you figure out where you want to go, and you kind of develop the experience with the help of the mentor that you've chosen. And they fill out some things saying how you're going to be evaluated and what they agree with what you've written that you're going to do. And then it's a competitive application process through the curriculum committee. And that happens in your 3rd year, the beginning of your 3rd year, that you have to apply for these for your 4th year. And depending on your track, you may be granted up to 4 off-campus blocks. So that would be another 12 weeks. But most people, if you apply for off-campus blocks, you'll get 1 or 2, because we have a limit of 60 per 4th year class, so that we don't have too many students off campus at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And I think we missed a question, one above that. It was asking about tracking and how you came to your decision and being uncertain about how to track. So I just want to, I know that's a huge concern a lot of people have during our first couple years of school. And I personally had that concern myself. I wasn't sure. I don't have a ton of large animal experience. I didn't grow up on a farm. I was more of a small animal, private practice type of guy. But when you get here and get your feet on the ground, you start finding what you enjoy to do. And I think that's the most important part about making decisions as you guys are becoming young professionals. You guys are getting out of undergrad at this point. So it's really, shaping your life on the things that you're interested in. And that'll really help you out a lot. So personally, I chose the mixed animal track because I wanted a broader knowledge base, not only for the NAVLE, which is the licensure exam you guys will take during your 4th year to just put things out for you. But I also am I'll be active duty in the military coming up. And so I'll be in the United States Veterinary Corps and going overseas. I could see a herd of goats and I'll have to come up with some quick thinking logic on what could be going on with them. I'll have to vaccinate and all of those things. And so I wanted a very robust curriculum and a robust just clinical base that I could build off of for my future. Because like I said, I did my externship at the zoo as well. Some of that work has to go into that as well. So that's why I chose to track mixed animal.
Yeah, and I'll kind of add and talk about why I decided small animal. So one of the things I loved about my first year here at Purdue is within the first semester, we had labs in our veterinary clinical skills course with dogs and cats and horses and cows. So we got the experience to have hands-on, veterinary related things with those species. And I loved every single one of them. I love cows, I love horses, I love the large animals. But I didn't want to practice veterinary medicine on them. I love them. I might have some lawn ornaments one day that are them, but I didn't want to practice every day on them. And I also kind of going through the 3 years, and something I do like is you don't have to decide your track right away. So you have some time to make that decision. And I decided over the first few years that I really liked learning and I thought I might want to specialize. So I wanted to dive deeper into the different little nooks and crannies of the veterinary field. And so tracking small animal allows me to take a few more small animal electives, neurology, ophthalmology, oncology, all those little things. So I can kind of try to figure out what it is I really like. So that's kind of my perception.
Tati.
Sorry, I didn't realize if we all wanted to pitch in. And I saw that Lori was talking, so I didn't know if she was talking to us and she forgot that her mic was
I clicked, but I didn't click on the mute thing. I'm like clicking.
I didn't know if you
We didn't tell you were muted, so.
Yeah, thanks. You just watched me make a fool out of myself, guys. Whatever.
I can answer that too about the track, I guess. I came in with an open mind. I wanted to try it all. And if I really enjoyed large animal, I wanted to pursue that too. But I grew up in Ukraine. I mean, we had chickens and pigs. I was exposed to large animal, but never really to the a medicine part of it. Never really had veterinarians come by. They didn't receive the care they needed, I guess. We just raised them for food for a year. So when I started here, I really found out, wow, I don't know a lot about large animal, and it was tough for me to learn all the layman's terms in large animal world, like the knee in the horse is not the knee. I was like, what? Too much. So I knew that I was just more comfortable with small animal side, and similar to Sarah, I decided to track small because that allowed me to spend more time focusing on only small animal side of things. So I was able to do focus on dentistry and things that I knew I would see out in practice and get more training in that track and not do half and half essentially.
All right. Our next question is, and this is a good question, what is your biggest area of non-academic growth? Did you learn to better manage stress, for example? Did you grow non-academically, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I wouldn't say I have learned to better manage stress. I have just learned to become less stressed about certain things. So like a lot of you might be coming from having fantastic grades in undergrad because you kind of need to in order to get to this point. But in vet school, that doesn't happen. So some of the classes, the A through C scale, ABC is kind of shifted. So instead of a low end of a C minus being 70, it's like 76. And so even if you're used to still doing like 95s instead of an A plus, it might be an A. So many of our peers in our classes and younger classes and older classes have talked about how you should just care less about your grades. Obviously strive to do the best that you possibly can. It's what we can do. But if you maybe get a B on a test and you're used to getting A's, it's okay.
Yeah, I think something that helps me to add on to that, in addition to what Sarah said, because I think that's super important too. It's that mentality shift of you're really learning for your career. You're not, trying to prove something to somebody else. You're really just trying to set yourself up for your patients in the future. So the biggest area of non-academic growth, stress management techniques, I guess, is for me just to have a life outside of vet school. And so you've got to find time, whether it's at the beginning of the day or the end of the day, to think about yourself, to think about your family, and things like that. So I really like going to the gym and keeping active there, whether it's playing basketball or lifting some weights, hanging out with my family, doing Zoom chats and things like that. Those are really good support structures that I think if you ingrain into your life and professional life, that'll make you a very well-rounded individual.
Same. I would say my biggest area of non-academic growth is just learning to prioritize things that I wanted to keep in my life, because I knew I didn't have time for everything. So I didn't have time to talk to friends every single day, or go do ceramics because I love ceramics every weekend. But just kind of finding the things that are important to you and saying no to people that when you don't have time, you don't have time, and saying no to, I guess, things that you used to love to do, but you have to kind of prioritize. But similar to Jeff, like I wanted to keep like some of my relationships going, and I wanted to stay in touch with friends and family. So you find time for it, and sometimes you have to tell them no. That was my, I guess.
Very good. All right, next question. When and where do you take the national board exams? Is this something that takes place at PVM, or is there a specific testing site?
Yeah, so you'll learn more about that in vet school, and the faculty will help you get it set up. Dr. Salisbury and Dr. Wiseman and student services kind of help things move along as you go through the curriculum. But you'll take it away from Purdue at a testing site, and there should be multiple ones in every state. So if you're on externship or something like that, you can figure out how to make that work for you.
Yeah, so there are 2 times within your 4th year that you can take it. So there's a fall testing window and a spring testing window. Most everyone will sign up for the fall testing window at Purdue. And then if something happens, you are sick that day or something comes up and you can't make it up within the fall, you still have the spring to take it up. But you are in your 4th year when you take it. But yeah.
All right. Do you guys feel as though you can still reach out to your professors from first, second, and third year?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mrs. Dr. Inouye was walking around the hallways in the hospital yesterday or today. It was so nice to see her. We haven't seen her in so long, at least I hadn't. But yeah, we can absolutely reach out to them.
And a lot of them, like you'll have them for lectures and you think, oh, all they do is come to a lecture. That's it. That's all they do. And then you start your 4th year and you're like, oh, all they do is surgery and see patients. And you forget that they also teach in the lecture, and you've already, so like you'll get your lectures on orthopedic surgery and you don't think about that same person being an actual orthopedic surgeon, but then now all I think about them is orthopedic surgeons and not lecturers in the hall. So you still see them all the time.
All right. Our next one is, and we kind of answered this about the zoos, externships and the zoos for the 4th year, and Jeff kind of mentioned that. But are there any interesting connections that Purdue has? And I think Dr. Salisbury a couple nights ago talked about Purdue's.
Dr. Salisbury commented on that with the Indy Zoo, I believe.
Yeah, good.
It is
Right.
largely up to us. I will say it is largely up to us to schedule them. But Purdue does have, like, some companies or hospitals will reach out and say, hey, I have externships. If you want to let your students know. But we do schedule them within our schedule. It's just not completely up to us to find them. But
We
if
have a
you
large
have them,
database of of externship sites that students have gone to where they do a little PowerPoint presentation on their experience. So that's a really good resource to find what types of externships you might want.
Mm-hmm. And to add to Dr. Salisbury, the question above says, does Purdue help you find externships? And yeah, I think it was 2 years ago, they started the Hire a Boilermaker career fair that all class grades, all ages are asked to go to, because it's a super critical time that you can talk to these companies, kind of hash out what you like in a company and what you don't like. And that would be an excellent opportunity for you guys to seek out externships, start talking about contracts and things like that. So it's those minor things that thinking ahead and doing a little bit more than the average person can really help you find some cool opportunities. This year, we had one that I believe it was on Zoom, and I talked to a company, and the owner of the company was like, hey, do you want to come out to Montana and go skiing and see the clinic? And I was like, yeah, that sounds awesome. I wish I would have talked to you last year so I could have planned that out. But yeah, absolutely, Purdue helps in a wonderful ways, and you'll really be astounded at the things you get to accomplish here.
And the other thing about externship is 6 weeks, but you don't have to do it all in one place. You can do 3 weeks and 3 weeks. You could do 2 weeks and 4 weeks. You could do 2 weeks, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. It depends what your goals are. You could get different experiences.
So Jeff's right. I kind of missed the first question on that one too. Did you guys talk about what externships you've already done though, or have been on? Jeff
So
mentioned his.
I mentioned a couple of mine, Sarah.
yeah, so I'm planning on doing an internship next year. So I looked at 2 private practices in the suburbs of Illinois that had large specialties, I guess, large hospitals. And I had them both planned. COVID didn't let me go to one of them. So I ended up going to a small animal GP and got a ton of hands-on experience. But then the other one, I went to a specialty small animal clinic in the suburbs of Chicago.
I did my externship in November, right? So I planned to take my Neville during my externship. So I split my externship into 2. So I did 3 weeks and 3 weeks. And my first 3 weeks I did at an eye care for animals in Chicago suburbs. And that was a great review. And luckily my Neville asked me at least 6 questions about eyes. And I got it. So that was pure luck, but I enjoyed that. So it was great help. And then I was really interested in dentistry too. So I did my last 3 weeks in dental practice, just a specialty dentistry center.
Awesome. Are there any research opportunities or practical experience you did over the summer that you'd recommend?
Go ahead, Tess.
My first year, we had a professor, Dr. Rupel, who was part of the college, and she was very involved in public health. And that year, she was looking into antimicrobial resistance. So I cannot say that this was a research project. I helped her read through some articles. We were doing mostly a literature review and just essentially exploring what the different literature was reporting based on what country, what continent, what that they were seeing. So I was just getting paid for reading papers, which was educational for me, but it was also on my schedule. It's like if I had exams, I didn't read any of her papers, and she was totally fine with that because it wasn't anything that had a huge deadline. It was mostly we were looking into it for a potential research project down the line. So I remember I spent a few months just kind of helping her out with that. But I know there are research opportunities over the summers that students apply to. I never did. I didn't want to spend the entire summer on campus. I wanted to get more like clinical experience working with patients. So I didn't apply for those, so I cannot speak about that. But I know it exists, and students stay and get, I think it's like $5,000 you get that summer that you work.
Dr. Salisbury, could you comment on that? I'm not sure any of us did that. I know we had a couple classmates who were involved in that summer research opportunity.
Yeah, this is the time you apply in January, and then faculty volunteer to be mentors, and you do get paid. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's a few $1,000s, and it's usually a 12-week program. And so you work in a faculty member's research lab or on a research project with them for that 12 weeks, and you prepare a poster at the end of it. And then when it's not COVID time, you go to a national meeting and you present your poster there and interact with vet students from all across the country that are in the summer research programs at the various vet schools. And it's really an enriching experience. They have a weekly seminar that everybody in the program participates in, where you hear about different research projects, as well as panel discussions about like life in academia and things like that. So you can explore research as a career. But it is a competitive program, and so they get lots of applications, and not everybody that applies is chosen for it.
All right, this is a good question. How have your professional, what soft skills are you especially putting emphasis on developing now as you start to prepare for practicing veterinary in the veterinary world? Maybe your communication skills, as I read that.
Yeah. Or Tati, were you gonna start?
Go ahead. I was just laughing.
The first thing that jumped to mind is kind of breaking down the communication between you and your client. So you're going to come through veterinary school and learn a huge wealth of knowledge in some terms like, sciatic nerve or rhabdomyolysis will mean something very particular in your mind, but to your client, they have no idea what that means. And so just learning to put yourself back in the shoes of somebody who is very concerned about their animal and wants to know more, but doesn't have the background that you do, either through your undergraduate education or at vet school, kind of breaking things down for clients is super important. And that's something that I've learned recently to really actively think of and do as I practice medicine.
I also found that as students, we usually get very excited about some diseases or diagnoses. We're like, oh, cool, wow, I've never seen that. But you kind of have to take a step back, and when you either in front of an owner or communicating whatever findings that you have found on their pet, that you are not excited about it, and that you're empathetic, and you share that it is sad news for the pet, and you understand that this is a difficult conversation that you are having. So sometimes where it's like, wow, this is very cool slide. It's like a mast cell tumor, like a high mitotic gray. It's so cool on the slide. And then you're like, oh, that really sucks for this pet. So when you, like, I'm on oncology service right now, so it's a lot of cool things to see, but then you realize how much it actually is not cool for the pet. So I just found, like, in the moment, I'll be excited about learning something about a disease I haven't learned before or didn't know as much about. But then when you communicate to the client, you take time and you explain it, and you use empathetic tone, and you kind of check in with them and make sure that they are processing it okay. Yes.
Awesome.
I have all the
So,
same things to say. Communication.
so are you guys the ones that we did the communication with at the very, so how did that, talk about that a little bit. So how did that help you guys once you were actually in the hospital doing that, the communication with the mock communication that we did? It helped me. I cried.
Oh my gosh.
Or
Yeah, so I
like
can just,
client.
I was
Yeah.
a client.
do they know about that? Can I explain that a little bit? Yeah,
No,
so
go
when
ahead,
we
Ms.
were
Grant.
when we were put online for the first couple months before fourth year started, just, to give COVID time to do its thing, we had online modules. So there was one time where or a couple times where we had to talk to clients, and it was like the Zoom. So we were face to face kind of, but we worked through exercises. So the end one was like a poor prognosis or some kind of like medical error. So I think there was one where a dog jumped off of a gurney and like broke a leg. And so we had to communicate that as the veterinarian to a client actor who was someone else within the hospital. And they were, I think some of them were told to be a little irrational.
We didn't have to tell Lori to do that.
Yeah, but we had,
I don't know where my Oscar is for that, but I'm still waiting.
it was definitely comical to say the least.
Mhm.
But we had to kind of talk to them and practice communication skills because that happens in the real world. You have clients that just don't calm down, or they just can't get over themselves. So we practiced that, which actually really helped a lot. And it was kind of tough, but the best thing that I think came out of it was just to kind of remind ourselves that we need to do closed loop communication, checking in with them to make sure they understand everything. What questions do you have for me, instead of do you have questions for me? Just simple things like that. But definitely just still remembering to work on the communication piece, because even if you accidentally say radiograph instead of x-ray to an owner, if you just check in and say, does that all make sense to you? What questions do you have for me? If you accidentally said something, you say, oh yeah, could you clarify this one thing? That gives you a chance to do it. So communication is key, especially in the age of phone communication and not, talking to clients face to face anymore.
And those client interactions, we recorded them all.
Mhm.
And then the faculty then watched the recordings and then met with the students and gave them feedback, and they gave each other feedback as well.
Yeah.
I loved it. I hope we do it again.
It was
We
a good
are going to
experience.
do it again. They're going to do it in first, second, and third year.
Really?
Eventually, we're going to be incorporating it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, good.
It was definitely helpful because I had a seizure dog case, so that prompted me to actually read on seizures, know what the treatments, and you don't know what questions the owners will ask you. So if they ask you what kind of side effects should I expect my dog to have on phenobarbital, I should know that. So that prompted me to prepare for my case. And then I learned about seizures, but really it was a communications exercise. So it was good.
Mhm.
All right. What's our next question? I lost my place. As far as mixed animal clinics go, how is your time divided between the small animal hospital and the large animal hospital?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think I'll take that one, considering I'm the only mixed tracking person here. But it's kind of however you want to make it. So mixed animal track is good in that there's a lot of flexibility, and there are some rigid pathways you have to take, like everyone takes large animal medicine and large animal surgery, small animal medicine, small animal surgery on the mixed track. But you also have selectives that you'll choose from. So I just pulled up my little book that they gave us to kind of plan for your fourth year. And you get to choose between like a second small animal medicine, a second large animal medicine or surgery, small animal emergency critical care, or some like equine community practice or bovine therio. And then you also have electives where you kind of get to choose wherever you'd like to be in the hospital. So it's really up to you on how you want to do it, and they try not to restrict your imagination too much.
Good. Thank you for that one. I think we answered the communication one. So obviously COVID has changed things, but in a normal year, what proportion of the 17 blocks are done at Purdue and what proportion are done elsewhere, especially for someone pursuing large or mixed animal medicine?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on that a little bit just then. But if you're tracking large animals specifically, all of your blocks will be large animal, except for, I think, like anesthesia, you might have some small animal cases and some things like that. And so there's a lot of variability, like I said, with what you get to do. There's some Purdue blocks where you get to go out on ancillary and go on farm calls and things like that, but you can also incorporate that into your externship as well.
So, and I would say that most people that focus on large animals, especially food animals, will do at least one off-campus block. So they'll do their 6-week externship plus another 3 weeks off campus, and sometimes a second 3-week block off campus. So that's pretty common.
All right, here's a good question for you. Throughout your time as a vet student, what energizes you the most and what leaves you the most drained? And let's not say people. So
Oh,
Jeff,
no.
you can't.
I was going to say people
Sarah.
energize me the most, but
I meant like, don't say people drain you.
no, not at all. Not at all. I love caffeine and coffee. And so when another person is
He
as
does.
hyperactive as I am, it really energizes me to just push through it and keep going. So that's really what I love.
What energizes me the most is when I actually realize I have learned something that has stuck in my brain. So if I have a dog that comes in and I review the records and I have my problem list and they ask me for diagnostics and I tell them, I want to do CBC chem because I want to look at the red blood cells. I want to look at, the liver enzymes. I want to look at this. And you're like, and they say, yep, great. Like when I get that affirmation of, I know what I'm talking about, that energizes me.
I totally agree with that. For me, it's you've done the work, you prepared for your case, you present your case to your clinician, and you're like, I rocked that. I knew what I was talking about. The clinician was asking me questions. I knew how to answer them. I understood my case. I learned from my case. For me, I enjoy surgery a lot. So I remember on my shelter med rotation when I was doing multiple surgeries a day, I was like on a high every day. I think my energies were like through the roof every day, which was great. And then for draining part, I think sometimes just like, I don't want to say people, but difficult cases, or when like some owners just do not understand like the structure of a teaching hospital, and that the things take longer and their appointments may take all day, just depending on like how fast we can get their pet into the CT scan or an MRI. And sometimes it just requires a lot of patience. And if they're being rude or like hanging up on the phone, and it's of course more difficult to communicate through the phone and not in person. So there's just a lot of frustration sometimes from the owners, and sometimes it's draining just to know that you're doing your best and you're trying to help them the best you can. And sometimes there's just not that appreciation of it, but most owners are not like that. It's just sometimes happens.
So how has it been for you guys, especially with I think we're doing curbside and the communication with your clients? How has that worked for you, and what were the challenges there?
I mean, it's definitely different. Yeah. Go ahead, Tati.
No, you I was just going to say every service also has their own way of doing things. So because of COVID, we have our blocks only 2 weeks, not 3 weeks. So every 2 weeks we're in a different rotation, and every service does things a little bit differently to stay more efficient depending on how many cases they see per day. So some clinicians prefer, we call an advance, to collect history, find out what their goals for their appointment is, and then go to the car and get the animal. Some services want you to just go to the car, get the pet, ask them a few questions by the car, come back, then call once we have a plan for what we would like to do and recommend. So in my experience, I prefer to call in advance. Sometimes if I forgot to ask them something over the phone, by the time I walk to the car, I'm like, oh, I forgot to ask if the pet was fasted. That gives me another chance to ask them a question. I've also found that when it got colder now, if I'm asking questions by the car, people are like, my pet is cold. You need to go inside. I don't care what you want to ask me. My cat is cold. So I think it's just depending on the service sometimes, but I've found my preference to just do ahead of getting the pet.
Good, thanks. Oh, where are we at? Sorry. How difficult is it for you guys to travel during fourth year rotations? How often are you on call? And what do holidays look like?
Yeah, big breakdown there. So for us, because it's COVID time, the first question's a little bit different, but we can definitely hit on the on-call stuff and your hospital responsibilities. So with this new implementation of the ICU emergency block, that'll really help you guys have a little bit more time on your weekends to either, get your work done throughout the week or to go visit family on certain blocks. And it does depend on what rotations you're on. For instance, right now I'm on ancillary, which is a tri-combination of microbiology, gross necropsy, and then clinical pathology. And it's a lot of hustle and bustle during the week because you're doing 3 services all at once. But I have technically no weekend responsibilities except 1 day on call. And so that's really great for me. I have time to study for my cases or an exam in the future or something like that. Time to study for NAVLE, which we've already taken that now and gotten good results back from that. So that's good. But now I can look forward to maintaining those other areas in life that are important, like your family, your friends, and then catching up on your cases and making sure they're your priority as well. So what blocks are you guys on right now?
I'm on diagnostic imaging, so I have no responsibilities on weekends.
I am on oncology, and it's 2 of us. So I get this weekend off, and then I'm on call next weekend. But on oncology, it's quite unlikely to be called in unless there is some sort of emergency on a weekend or a transfer on a weekend that they'll take in. But it doesn't happen often.
Yeah, and just
on oncology.
to answer all kind of 3 of those questions in one big thing, it depends on the block you're on. So last weekend when I was on ancillary, like Jeff is now, I was able to go home for the weekend to see my parents. But when you're on certain rotations, not. So when you're on small animal medicine, they have been doing a very good job of getting students out of the hospital. So you're on one weekend, you're one weekend off. So throughout, you should for the whole weekend not have any responsibilities. But sometimes when you're on surgery, neurology, either soft tissue surgery, orthopedic surgery, or neurology, you will be on call. Same with anesthesia, you'll have set on-call shifts. Now you can trade those shifts out with a blockmate if you need to. So you can adjust. It's just the hard thing is planning months or weeks in advance because you're not sure what the block will look like when you get there. That's just kind of the difficult thing. And the holidays also look different on all services as well. If you're on emergency, usually you'll be working during some of the holidays. This past Thanksgiving, I was on cardiology. So I had Wednesday was emergency only, Thursday was off, and Friday was off. And so I had no responsibilities at the hospital. Just completely depends on what service you're on. If you're on medicine during a holiday, you'll have responsibilities in the hospital. So yeah, depends on the service.
Jeff, talk about large animal medicine and large animal surgery.
Yeah, so let me kind of think about when I was on those. So large animal surgery, we maintained our working on our cases throughout the week and the weekend. And so those were pretty intensive blocks. And so for those particularly, I came in Saturday and stayed for rounds after my morning treatment. So I got there in the morning, saw my patients, gave them their medications, any updates from there. And then I got to assess the patient head to toe myself and present that to a resident who, then gave me some feedback on how I was doing or how the patient was doing. And it was a lot more work, but it was also a lot of reward from that because you get to see the progression of your case as it's staying in the hospital. And that was similar for the large animal medicine. And so, it's more time in the hospital, but you need to think of that as more time to, really see things you don't get to see other times instead of, oh man, I have to go into the hospital. Like that mentality shift really helps me keep on top of the game and just keep going when times seem rough.
And there are rotations like that where you don't have any days off for 3 weeks.
Yep. And I paired like 4 of those in a row. And so it did kind of take a lot out of me, but at the same point, like that's what we're signing up for, is to kind of learn and go through these rigorous processes. And that kind of helps teach you who you are and gives you a little edge on life and just kind of makes you a more interesting person when you get through something like that. So it's not all bad when you have to go through something that kind of sucks.
You get a lot of inside jokes with whoever you had to do surgery at 2 a.m. with, so it's always fun.
All right. Good answers, guys. I really liked hearing that, actually. So many students track mixed animal for the NAVLE, even though they intend to go into small animal practice?
I would
No.
recommend not.
Yeah,
No.
no, I think the majority opinion is that you shouldn't do that. I don't know of anyone that has done that personally, because you learn a lot of things large. If you like me, so I track small. I learned a lot of large animal things in my 3rd year that helped me plenty for the NAVLE. So I never felt disadvantaged for tracking only small when I took the NAVLE.
When I studied large animal things for a NAVLE, I used 3rd year core courses, and you'll take your NAVLE between September and December, so you're only counting rotations that you'll have between May and that time. So it's not like you'll get to cover all your small and all your mixed animal rotations to count that as your study time. You'll have to study regardless. So I wouldn't say choose a different track than you anticipate going into.
All right. This is a lot of questions here, so I'm going to break it down just a few at a time. What is life in Indiana like? And it's amazing, but I'll let them tell you. Cost of living and accessibility to the necessities. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah, so life like in Indiana, I've lived here my whole life and it's pretty great. Obviously, we don't have super large mountains like in Colorado or down in the Smokies, where I also love to be. But we do have a lot of, what's that?
Or in Ukraine.
Or in Ukraine. Yeah, I haven't been there either. Maybe someday, that'd be pretty cool. But there are really cool things to do here. Like an hour south of us is Turkey Run State Park. It's super fun to go hiking there. There are huge slates of rock you can climb up on and mess around on that. We've got a really strong basketball team here that's really fun to go and watch those games. It's a really rich college town, West Lafayette. And then you're kind of in the center of the US, so you can go anywhere you want from here besides that.
All right.
As someone who I guess, go ahead.
No,
You've answered. I was just gonna say, like, I did my undergrad in Chicago and I came here, but then you're so busy at school, you have things to do after school at home. So it's not like you have to do some, like you don't need there to be a lot of things to find something to do. Like right now we have an ice skating rink. Like I just went ice skating last night, so it's a small rink, but it's something to do. I know, like first year when we were still young and energetic, we would go to the Cactus, which is now closed, but it was like a barn dancing thing, I guess. But that was in our younger years. There's a movie theater in town. There's Exploration Acres, which they make like a corn maze out of, and that has become a tradition, at least for me, to go every year. And it's like apple cider and elephant ears, and you just eat and go through the maze, and it's fun. So I've always found things to do. So it's not as boring as it may seem.
Yeah, and the cost of living is a great addition to that. So it's pretty low nationwide average. I believe Indiana is pretty low, and West Lafayette itself is decently low in the state as well. So it's not a huge city like Indianapolis or Chicago, which is in Illinois, but it is like it's manageable and accessibility to the necessities. You'll probably want to have a car, but if not, live with some other vet students or get a roommate that you can, bear to be around and just hitch a ride with them. We've got plenty of grocery stores around and things like that. So don't worry too much about that.
We have a few more questions, and I know we're a little over our time. So if you guys want to stay, we'll kind of finish these questions up.
Oh, yeah.
But
I'm
if
down.
if anyone has to leave, I mean, you're more than welcome, of course, but we're going to keep on going just to answer the rest of these. All right. So the next question in that was about the NAVLE prep being incorporated into the 4th year. So how is that done? And what resources do you have available for NAVLE prep?
Yeah, if Dr. Salisbury wants to hit on the prep course itself, and then we can talk about our own ways that we prepped for it. I think that would work well.
Yeah, so this year was a little different because of COVID. So we had an online course at the beginning of the summer instead of clinical rotations before we started clinical rotations back up again. And the faculty recorded many review sessions for the NAVLE on different diseases of different species. Typically what happens in a regular year when we're doing 12 months of clinical rotations is we'll schedule seminars that the faculty give, which are the same things that they recorded for this year. But and they're on NAVLE review topics, so that some student reps will schedule that throughout the fall, the summer and fall, and then there's programs that you can purchase that most students will purchase, either Vet Prep or Zuku, and you guys can talk about how you did that. And we talked about how to study and that type of thing.
You got 2 and 3 because Sarah's awesome as well, but 2 student representatives of the services that you can kind of purchase to help you prepare for the NAVLE. I was the Zuku review representative and Tati was the Vet Prep representative. And those are 2 really integrated, really great resources for you to kind of go through everything there is to know about veterinary medicine. They've got multiple ways of presenting information to you, whether it be videos or power pages on diseases, you know, top 10 canine diseases, top 10 heart diseases, things like that, that kind of help you prepare for the NAVLE and then also your career after the NAVLE, because you have to think about that as well.
Yeah. So since I had vet prep, the company, if you're a rep, they essentially give you their, I don't know if Zuku had a premium and non-premium account, but Vet Prep gave me a free premium account. So I had access to lectures, power pages, exam questions, and practice questions. So I could take it in a form of I would just want to do a few core questions at a time, or I wanted to sit down and take a timed exam to see if I can answer a question a minute, essentially, is what you have on a NAVLE. And then it gives you like different statistics on like, usually you answer the most questions about these species. These species you're not as good as. And then it gives you a breakdown of like, in equine species, your best topic is endocrinology. So then I'm like, okay, I got it. I'm not going to study endocrine system for horses anymore because looks like I got it. But then it says dermatology in horses was your worst. So then I'm like, okay, I have to study up on my derm things because I can't answer those questions. So I like that it gave you a lot of statistics, that there were a lot of like repetitive questions or questions essentially asking the same thing in a different way. So it just gave you more and more practice.
Yeah, and I recommend your first year as a vet student looking at both of their websites, because there's a thing you can sign up for being the question of the day. And every single day they'll send you a question and you can get an idea of what type of things they ask about, how they ask questions, and that'll kind of help feel which service you choose to do. I would recommend, you know, they're not paying me to say this or anything. I would recommend getting one of those services. I've talked to a lot of other students and they think it helps out quite a bit. Even though our curriculum does cover the material, it's just good to see it multiple different ways and multiple different times. And so Vet Prep and Zuku are, you know, side by side. The programs are very, very similar, cover the same material. It's just covered in different ways. So check both of them out. Sign up for that question of the day, and you guys will be all right.
All right. Next question on that would be, how are rotations picked or scheduled, and what is the scheduling of exams like? And do we have access to elective courses, available elective courses?
So I can talk about that a little bit. Rotations are picked/scheduled, so it's kind of, there are different tiers of it. So the first tier is you basically write 3 recommendations of when you want your vacation block and externship block. And Dr. Salzberg, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I remember is you do vacation block and externship. You kind of give them 3 options, and then they take a couple weeks, and then they tell you, okay, these when yours are going to be scheduled. Then after that, you can look at your required rotations and your elective rotations you want to take, and then you kind of make a mock schedule and you can rank wherever you want them. So if you have a wedding you have to go to one weekend and you really, really want to do DXI on that over that weekend because you know you won't have patient responsibilities on the weekend, you can rank that number 1. And so it kind of goes into this algorithm after everyone is done, and it just sends it out to you. So there is a little bit of scheduling. You can't pick exactly where everything wants to go, although sometimes if you do that, maybe you happen to get it, so you could. But it's a little bit of a tier process like that. And then scheduling of exams. So depends on the year. First and second year, you don't have as many courses, so it's not as many exams every week. Third year, you're in more courses because there's just a lot more to go over. So you have usually at least 1 exam a week, usually multiple. But like you guys are used to right now, you have a finals week at the end of every semester where you could have 1 exam every day. So there were some weeks, and I think second, maybe third year, where we had like 5 exams in 4 days, but there was a weekend in between. So it depends from week to week. In the beginning of the semester, there aren't as many. As it goes on, there's a little bit more. But yeah, you can have 1, maybe up to 3 exams in a week, I'd say, depending on what courses you're in.
One thing I did like, I had a friend who went to U of I, and I know the way they did their exams, they kind of have multiple courses in one big exam. And as long as you pass that exam, you're good. But you could fail, like if the exam covers anatomy, physiology, and histology, you could fail the histology part. But as long as you did great on anatomy and physiology, that overall grade kind of pushed you over. I like that at Purdue, every class has its own exam. You have to pass every class, essentially. You cannot do that BOGO deal, I call it. So every class kind of has its own exam schedule, but I remember like when midterms came along, maybe like a month after school starts, like late September, you have like a wave of exams. Then a month later, you have second wave of midterms, and then you have finals pretty much. But every class has its own exams, which I think is good.
And the last question for this is not for the whole thing, but for Brittany that she's asked is there any focus on One Health initiative, international vet med global outreach throughout the 4 years?
Yes, I was a One Health Club president a year ago. It now seems forever ago.
When you were
But
younger, right?
yes, when I had more energy. But we do have a One Health Club, so they do focus on kind of bridging the human, environmental, and animal health. They try to bring in speakers that focus on aspects of our world that affects all 3. And we talk a lot about antimicrobial resistance. We talk about zoonotic diseases. We talk about like some chemicals in the environment that affects everybody's health and so on. So there's been a lot of, I know in the past they've gone to CDC. We usually organize like a big event that involves we have One Health Week in November. So there's a bunch of events. There's a big speaker event where we invite somebody who's doing either research in the field or has something to share. So the whole school participates in that. So I would say Purdue is like doing a great job at incorporating that. And they have Dr. Purdue, Dr. Rupel, who used to work at Vet Med College, now works at Purdue, but for health sciences, I believe. So she's a veterinarian who's very involved in public health, One Health. So she's still connected to vet students. So if anyone ever wanted to do anything, and I know she's still an advisor for the MPH program that's through Minnesota. So you can do a dual
She's not
degree.
the advisor anymore. Dr.
Oh,
Moore
she's
is.
not.
Yeah, Dr. Moore does that.
But I
But we-
know that there's a dual degree where you can get your DVM and your MPH at the same time.
Mhm.
And international opportunities are amazing because we have our own office essentially that offers scholarships. They can work on getting you an experience in any country you want. My second year, I went to Thailand, and I worked in a wildlife hospital there. There's some opportunity there to work with elephants as well. So, and you can plan for as long as you want. You can stay the entire summer. I only went for 1 week at the wildlife hospital, and then I also wanted to see my family, so I kind of jumped through countries, but I got pretty much my entire trip paid for with the scholarship that Purdue offers, which was amazing. And then my fourth year, they also offer a lot of international experiences for the fourth year, and I was supposed to do a rotation in Switzerland. So you can spend some time in University of Bern, University of Zurich. You kind of learn, it's like small animal, internal med, surgery, hemodialysis. So a lot of different aspects, but because of COVID, we couldn't go. I'm still grieving that. But there are so many experiences. I'm not sure if Sarah or Jeff, if you could go on.
Yeah, I didn't end up going abroad anywhere, but I do want to say Purdue is very good about One Health. Like Tati said, they have the club and they have One Health Week. Same with international. There's an international travel club. They also have courses now. There's the public health course, which I think was started the year before us. I could be
We've
wrong.
actually had that for a long time, but it's been modified over the years. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a public health course that you will take. There's also an international course that you could take if you want to offer it as an elective. So they have courses you can get credit for. There are also clubs you can take. But yeah, Purdue is all about those different kind of aspects of veterinary medicine that are not quite just clinical practice.
And we have a strategic plan that we use to guide our decisions. And one of the objectives in our strategic plan is to have every graduate of our program have an international experience at some point in their program at PVM. And COVID has put a damper on that. But up until that, we were making really good progress at getting a large percentage of the class having an international experience.
All right. Our next question is, can you do externships outside of Indiana? And I believe that answer is yes, you can. You can do them anywhere.
Anywhere in the world,
Yep.
as long as you're working with a veterinarian.
Okay. And next one is, does Purdue offer any continuing education programs to past graduates? And we do. We actually have a continuing education department that offers lots of opportunities for continuing education. Dr. Salisbury, do you want to talk any more about that one?
Yeah, there's a fall conference, a conference that's usually in September for our alumni, and it's a national conference, so people come from all over. We have national speakers. It's a good conference. And then there's multiple other continuing education things. There's actually a conference this weekend, the Horseman's Conference, that's more lay people oriented, but that's this weekend, and several of our faculty are speaking at that.
Yes. All right. And then back to the kind of the communication aspect of your guys's experiences. So how have you been able to handle emotional responses when having tough conversation with clients when you have to deliver bad news?
That's tough.
It's a good question though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely something that you're going to have to endure as a veterinarian, is just having hard conversations with clients that are very attached to their pets that they consider, very close family members. So how have you been able to handle it? I mean, don't take it personally if a client is frustrated with you or upset, really angry, crying or manic and then depressive. You can't control what somebody else does, but you can control the way you react to it. And so just try to take a minute and calm down after you have one of those situations, and just realize that you did your best, you worked hard, and things don't always go the way that you wish they would, but if immortality was the game, then we wouldn't be here. So
True.
Yeah, I'm that person who's a little overly attached to my patients, especially when they spend weeks with me in the hospital. I've had to have quite a few tough conversations, and I think for the ones that are long term, just being honest with them the whole time. If you don't think their pet looks as good one morning, just tell them, don't try to be like, oh, he looks fine. He didn't want to eat, but I'm sure he just was in a mood. Be like, he didn't want to eat this morning. I think he's not looking as great because something happens to happen and you have to say, hey, he's really looking worse. You don't want them to be at a total, shock when that happens. And just if after you have given bad news, just try to be empathetic. Try to be like, I can't possibly understand what you're going through, different things like that. But it is very hard. It's been nice to have to go through some of those things in fourth year as a student instead of my first time being when I'm a veterinarian and having to be, the adult. But yes, it is very hard and it's something that we need to adjust to being in this career.
Absolutely. And we are encouraged to help in cases when we have to go through euthanasia. And it is nice to kind of be there for the client and the pet. And you will also have your senior clinician with you, so you'll learn how they communicate too. And you're there because you were many times the point of contact between the owner, and you communicate about their pet and you took care of them. So it's also nice to be there for them at such a tough moment. And gosh, I've had instances where I cried with them because it was sad, and you get attached to them as well. And I don't think there's anything wrong with showing your emotion when you want to, because you're a human too. So you have to kind of take the time to process your emotions as well, and make sure that you are there for the owner too in that instance.
I ate a lot of chocolate when I came home those days.
I bet.
Yeah.
Sarah, I think you mentioned going on an internship next after you're done. So does that mean, because the question is, are any of you considering specializing? So are you considering specializing?
Yeah, I am. So I've kind of had a crazy, not really that crazy yet because I'm not even in DVM yet, but crazy veterinary career in my veterinary school experience. I went in the first 1 or 2 years thinking, yeah, vet med, super great. And then halfway through second year, all of third year, I was like, wow, I don't think I ever want to do veterinary medicine again. So I was looking into public health. I was looking into all different aspects of non-clinical things. And then when COVID happened, I was a student worker in the ICU and the ER here at school, and I fell in love with it, and I fell in love with learning. And throughout fourth year, I have really enjoyed learning what I'm doing, being kind of quizzed, by the professors, the teachers, or the doctors here, clinicians, being quizzed, having to think of different things, just the physiology of everything and thinking. And I've learned from myself that I love learning and I want to continue learning, because even though I know whatever I go into with veterinary medicine, I'm going to be learning, my whole career, but I wanted to be somewhere where learning is a core part of what I'm doing. So I did decide that I do want to specialize. Right now I'm thinking of doing emergency and critical care. But it didn't really hit me until fourth year. And there are some people, one of my really good friends knew before she even went to vet school that she was going to specialize. And so I think everyone takes a different path. It didn't hit me until fourth year. Some people think they're gung-ho about specializing, and then fourth year hits and they're like, I want to get out of here, get my DVM, and never think about going back to school again. So it's different for everyone. But does that answer your question, Caitlin?
I think so.
She's still here. She might not be here.
She'll get it on the recording then.
Okay.
All right. Next one, we're about done. Is there anything, and this is a good question too, is there anything you wish you would have done differently, whether that's how you studied or what rotations you took?
For me, I think I thought 4 years is so long, and now I look back and I know that I only have 4 months left, and I regret not meeting my friends more often, or I prefer to study alone. I'm an individual studier, so sometimes maybe I should have gone to those group studies and eaten pizza, or just at 2 a.m. or something random. So I guess some of my regrets are just like passing on the opportunities that were not really school related, just with your classmates that become your friends and family. I regret not doing more of those things because I was like, oh, I'll be too tired, or it's too late, or I'll do it next weekend or next year. Because now I only have 4 months left of that. And it's COVID, and we're not encouraged to hang out in big groups now. So do it a lot,
Yes.
I'm saying.
I would do the same thing. Not hanging out with people as often because I was worried about studying for an exam, having tunnel vision about classes when I should have been, looking at the bigger picture of spending time with friends or going home that one weekend to hang out with my family. So yeah.
All right. So our next one, we're about done, I think. What do you do when you're not on a rotation? Are there still classes at all?
The only time you're not on a rotation is when you have your one vacation block. Otherwise, you're always on a rotation in your
So
4th year.
the answer is when you're not on a rotation, you're on vacation. You get to do whatever you want. So there you go. And Jeff, were you in the military prior to being in veterinary school?
Yeah, so I was not in the military prior to vet school. I always thought it was something I wanted to do, but I wanted to make sure I became a veterinarian first. I grew up in Boy Scouts and I'm an Eagle Scout, so that's pretty cool. But it does not rule you out not being in the military prior to vet school. If you want to pursue the military, I definitely think it's been a great opportunity for me. They help pay for vet school. They help just put you through school in other ways as well, give you great leadership opportunities. It's super competitive. So when you're in, but a little bit before you get into vet school, just start looking into the application now. And then if you don't make it, which it's super competitive, I think there were 30 people in the country who got it. And I think there were 30 people at Purdue that applied for it, or, over the past couple of years at least. And so, with that, just don't limit yourself. If you want to do it, go for it. If you want to serve this country, it's a great way to do it. And there's opportunities for it after vet school as well.
Victoria asked, because we met Devante, was it last night or the night before? Last night. Are you and Devante in the same unit? She's just curious.
No, we're not. So he is a year younger than me, and units change as you do different training exercises. So I was not. I think it would have been cool, but we're in the same big army together. So hooah.
Oh. And would you guys be okay if I sent out your email addresses to these guys?
Yeah,
For
for
them
sure.
to email you?
Oh.
Awesome.
Oh, I just typed it.
Oh, that's fine. You can keep it there too.
All right.
I think unless someone else has any questions they want to pop on their mic, they can ask. We are about to be done for the evening, and this has been a great 6 days that we've had together and learning more about Purdue. And I hope that we've given you lots of information that you can take away and think about when we're done. So one of the things that I'm going to do, hopefully tomorrow, is send out the videos of the previous events. We are working on those, the communications team. And then I'll send out everyone's name and email addresses too, so y'all have that for your reference later on. Does anyone have any other questions, comments? And we thank you guys for coming too. They're all saying thank you in the chat. So
Thanks, everybody.
yeah, we'll stick around here just for a few minutes while everyone kind of clicks off. And so if anyone has a question, just pop on and we'll be here just for a few more minutes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm currently in the reserves, and out of curiosity, are there any like other reservist students that you guys know about, or like if they have issues with like their drill weekend?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would talk to your OIC and just figure it out how that works with them. And I know we had one student and she was in the reserves. I'm not sure if she still is during vet school, but just go up your chain of command and you can figure that out from them.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? All right.
Thank you.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
Please have a good night. Best of
You
luck.
too.
You too.
Thanks, you three.
Thanks. Yes, thank you so much.
No problem. This was great reminiscing of
Yeah, that was fun.